Hello friends, today we are back with another video and it's been so long. So in the last video we have seen the polyfill of Promise.all, and today we are going to see the next the next function available is on Promise, that is all settled. So Promise.all settled is what we are going to look today. First we'll try to understand what it is, then we'll see how we can make a polyfill of the same. So yeah, first we'll start what it is. So Promise.all settled method is very similar to Promise.all. It as Promise.all also used to return another promise. Promise.all settled also does the same thing. It returns the same. It returns a promise. That is why in this example here we are using Promise.all settled and we are giving an array. It's very similar to the Promise.all. We'll see how. First, let's focus that it takes an array, means iterable, where we can have many promises. Basically, this is iterable of promises, or so for example, array of promises it takes, and it returns another promise. So that is why we are using dot then to resolve the promise, and it returns the values of all of these promises which have been resolved. But there are some differences between all settled and all. So what is that? So the first thing is it it returns you the value, the array, in a different format that promise.all. Promise.all was just giving you the values. Okay, we have already seen it. If you haven't watched that video, I would say please go and watch that video first, then come to this. Otherwise, you'll not understand. Whenever I'll try to compare with promise.all, you'll not understand. So first go and watch that and then come to this and understand this. Okay, so as we can see, I've written the example here. We have used promise.all settled. We have given this array and then we are resolving it and we are consoling it, and I've written here what the output should be. So output, as you can see, is an array. As expected, we have given an array, we will receive an array at output, but this the values are in a different format. In promise.all, the values were just the actual values what a promise get resolved to, but here it's not like that. Here we are seeing it's an object where we have some properties like status. The value status will have either fulfilled or rejected. If it is a successful promise, then status will be fulfilled. If it is a rejected or it's unsuccessful, the status will be rejected. And beside that, if it is successful, then we'll have a value, and value will contain the value that promise getting resolved to. As we can see from this example, it should get resolved to 33. From here we can understand that it should get resolved to 66. So that is why we are seeing values here as 33 and 66. For the last example, here we are rejecting it with an error called an error. So in the cases where the promise is unsuccessful, it will give you the status as rejected, and it will give you a value called reason instead of value, and reason will contain the rejection reason for that particular promise. So that is what. So basically some differences with promise.all, that here we get the values irrespective whether promises are getting resolved or rejected. We are going to have the values for sure, and all of the promises are going to resolve or reject, then only we'll get the final value. That was not the case with the promise.all. Promise.all, whenever promise.all used to see something getting rejected, it used to immediately return a reject promise with reason, and it will not give you the values of the successful promises if you have any. But here that not the case. Here you will definitely get the values. Either all of it get rejected, all of it is successful, some of it is successful, some of it is not successful. You are definitely going to get all of the values. So we should use promise.all settled whenever we are interested in getting all the values, and these promises are not dependent upon each other. Means this promise is independent, this promise is independent, all are independent of each other. But if our promises are dependent upon each other, like we have a b c and I want a only when b is successful, or I want c when a and b is successful, means those are dependent, because if something fails, I don't want other things. In those cases we should use promise.all. But in those cases where promises are independent of each other and we just want the values of all of the promises, there we should use promise.all settled. So that's the basic difference. Promise.all, as I explained before in the previous video, is used for checking the fast failover, that something getting failed, immediately give me the value and I'll abort my thing. I'll not check further promises, I'll not check further things, I'll abort my thing. But promise.all.settled is not like that. Whichever is getting failed, let it fail. I'll give you the value, the final value. Here you'll not get the values directly, instead you'll get an object. An object will have properties called status. For sure, a status can have two values, fulfilled and rejected. And if it is a successful, then you'll have a value key, and if it is a unsuccessful, means rejected, then you'll have a reason key. So this is the difference between all settled and all, and I've already explained you how it is. So I'll again repeat that how it looks. So it takes an iterable array in which each member is a promise. So here this example I'm highlighting, it takes an iterable. In our case, it's an array in which each of these members are promises. Yeah, it's right, each of these members are promises. And now talking about the return value is another promise which resolves to an array of object. It resolves to an array of object. You can see this is array and this is array of object. There are many objects here, and each of these object has a status string present. Status string can have two things, fulfilled or rejected, based on whether a promise is successful or unsuccessful. Value will be present only if status is fulfilled. Reason will be present if the status is rejected. So it is about the return value. Now the use cases, I'll again repeat, when we have multiple asynchronous tasks that are not dependent on each other, then we should use this. Also, if we would like to know the result of each of the promises, then also we should use this. And if we compare this to promise.all may be more appropriate if tasks are dependent upon each other, or we would like to know immediately whether something is rejected. If something is getting rejected, we will reject our promise immediately. So that is what. Now we'll see how it works. So here in this example we have used these promises. I'll just run it. So look, I have given these values. Promise.resolve, obviously this will get resolved to value 33, this will get resolved to value 66 after a timeout of 0 second, and then it's a normal value. It's very similar to promise.all, where we can give the values as a normal value or a promise. So both will work, and please go watch that video. I've explained that it can contain both. And the last one is a reject, promise.reject. So obviously it's going to reject. See, we have all of the values and the order is also maintained. Order is also important. So first one is fulfilled, value 33. Second one is fulfilled, value is 66. Third one is fulfilled and value is 99. Fourth one is rejected, the status is rejected, and the reason is we have given this value and it's saying error. It should, I don't know why it's not printing, but it should have printed the reason like an error. So that is the thing. Now we are going to create our own promise.all settled, as we always do, the polyfill. So what we'll do is we will write the polyfill of it as we have done for promise.all. So I'll name it promise.myall settled is equal to, it should be a function. And what does it take? If you see, it takes an array, an iterable. So basically a promises array it takes, and here what we'll do is we will map through the list, the promises list. I will call it as normal single promise will get here, and we will return, because from the map function we should return always. I have explained map in one of my video. There I've created the polyfill as well. I would again request you to watch that as well, very beneficial. So this promise we are going to resolve it. So that is why I'm using .then, and so after it we have to give a callback function. Callback function will have this value, and as you can see that the final values what we see is an object, and it has two things: status should be fulfilled because it's a successful, and the value should be the value here. I'm just using ES6 notation. I don't have to write it like this because that's a the key and the value, if it is same, we don't have to write that specifically. We can just give this, and it yeah, I have to write it as return from here, and status and value both it will go. It's a ES6 short notation. So if key and the value is of same name, then just write the key, it will take the value as well. Now let's think that okay, we had this promise, we have this promises array, we took one promise, we resolved it, but what happens if it get rejected? Then in that case we have to write a catch. We have to catch that, right? Catch will have some reason. Here also we should return an object because we see that in rejected case as well it's an object. So the status should be rejected and region should be region. Same, very similar. If the key is same and the value is also same, then just write that and ES6 short notation and it will work for you. It will be like this. So we have done the both of the things, that we have resolved the promise if it is a successful. If it is not a successful and we got an error, then we are returning a status object. Now as you know that promise.map, or sorry, the map, if we are using map, it returns another array. So I'll name it as mapped promises. It has converted this into this form. Each of the promises either will return this object or this object, and finally we'll have the array. And we have this map promises. This is a promise, but it is a map promises array. And what we are going to do now is, we already know what Promise.all does. Promise.all takes an iterable. So what I'm going to use is promise.all, and I'll pass this iterable, this map promises, to Promise.all. And as all of you know how Promise.all works, Promise.all will iterate through this, maintain the same order, and give us the final values. And as we know, we are not rejecting anything from here. We are just returning the values based on whether it's a successful or a unsuccessful thing. So we are sure that Promise.all will never get rejected, and we'll have all of these values here. And why we are using Promise.all? Because it maintains the order. It maintains the same order in which we have given this value, that we have already seen it in Promise.all video, that how it maintains order and all. So we could have not used Promise.all, and we could have done very similar what we have done for Promise.all. We could have maintained the order and those things, but since we have already done that, so I did not want to repeat the same thing again and just take the benefit of Promise.all, which we know that we're going to maintain the same order. And yeah, so that's the thing. Now what I'm going to do is, I am going to copy this and paste it here, and instead of using the all settled, I'll use my all settled, and I will comment out this because I don't want this to execute. I will clear the console. So we are having this issue, promise.then is not a function. And by looking at it, it looks like it's because we are passing this value 99 in this array. One of the values 99, which is not a promise. And I've already explained in my previous video that even we can pass a value which is not a promise, and that is a valid scenario. So to handle such scenario, we need to be sure that this value, like which we are considering will always be promise, will not be, and we have to make it as promise. So what we'll do is, we'll use promise.resolve which will take anything and return a promise out of it. So we, by adding this line, this is what we have done in our earlier video as well, to make a simple value to be a promise, and we use promise.resolve. And now I think that this issue should get resolved, and yeah, this issue got resolved, and our my all settled is working. First is 33 as expected, second should be 66, third is 99, fourth is an error. So that is working fine. Make some adjustment and or an increment here, and yeah, it's all working fine. This is nice and crisp. So this is it, and in the next video we'll probably look into promise.trace, and then we'll see some more content regarding promises in further videos. Thank you guys.